Thank you very much. I am Maggy Hurchalla. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. For the last 5 years, I have been involved in a SLAPP suit. That's capital S-L-A-P-P. And it stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. You can look it up in Wikipedia. And Wikipedia will tell you that it is legal bullying that is meant to exhaust you, intimidate you, bankrupt you, and make you shut up. Martin County in the South Florida Water Management District also got slapped in the case that is styled South Florida Water Management District, Martin County, and Maggy Hurchalla. I can't talk about that case because it is, as they say, ongoing, and you're not supposed to try your case in the newspaper, which some people don't obey, but I think I should. The trial date has been set and moved, and set and moved, and set and moved 3 times. And we now have a trial date of February 5th, 2018. I am hoping to live long enough, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to the time when we can talk about the issues and the facts out loud and under oath. In the meantime, in August, the South Florida Water Management District settled with Lake Point. In October, Martin County settled with Lake Point. I am now the last one standing. My friends keep earnestly warning me that when I come to a hill, I should check my brakes. I should be very careful to wear a proper bathing suit when swimming. I should not drink anything before driving. And I should be very careful about not grabbing guys in inappropriate places. Last week, Lake Point's favorite media outlet announced that a criminal investigation of Hurchalla and others by a grand jury is currently underway. This week, I got a letter from the attorneys from the Sunshine News saying that it was possibly a poor choice of words. They apologized. And they did admit that it might be possible for someone to think that when you said a criminal investigation of Hurchalla is underway by a grand jury, that people might think that a criminal investigation of Hurchalla is underway. This week, 3 of our best commissioners, 2 current commissioners, and 1 former commissioner were attacked by our own legal system. In arrests and charges that have everyone wondering, why is it that the good guys get arrested for jaywalking and the bad guys get away with murder? But there does come a time when somebody has to say that the emperor has no clothes. And I can talk about the settlement agreements that the water district and the county agreed to. They're going to cost you and all of the taxpayers of South Florida millions of dollars. They're going to change Florida water law. And they're going to reinterpret Martin County's rules and policies in its comprehensive plan. The settlement that Martin County did in terms of the emperor and no clothes is, from my viewpoint, so bad that the commissioners who voted for it are pantless. But to talk about that settlement and those settlements, I need to tell you about Lake Point. And I will try to do it as carefully as possible, which means dully, and leaving out the gory details. If you want the gory details, there are books and documentaries and websites that will tell you all the more exciting parts about Lake Point. The Lake Point property is a little over 2,000 acres in western Martin County. If you think of driving out toward Lake Okeechobee, if you drive out toward Lake Okeechobee, it's about a mile from Lake Okeechobee, and it's just south of State Road 76 and the canal there. You can look at it on Google Earth. In 2000, way back in 2005, True Cane Sugar, that's Florida Crystals, the Fanbools, sold the north half of the property, that's called Lake Point, to a family called the Blakeleys, They were planning to build a polo players subdivision of 20-acre lots out there, and they obtained preliminary approval from the county. The South Florida Water Management District first got interested in Lake Point back in 2006. The district director proposed that the district buy the 2,200 acres for $68 million. This is a sugarcane field. The board turned it down. The Blakeleys continued their work on the subdivision, on phase 1 of the project. And in December of 2007, they came before the county commission again and they said, we've got a problem. We have discovered there is rock on the property. And if there is rock on the property, it will hurt the horses' hooves. And therefore, we must dig up all the rock and carry it away. And therefore, would you please give us a mining permit? So the county did in fact amend their development order to give them a commercial mining permit. And that mine has been open ever since. Almost immediately thereafter, in early January of 2008, the property was purchased by the Lindemann Group. They proposed a project that they said would save the Everglades, supply dry season water to the Loxahatchee River, and keep those damaging discharges from Lake Okeechobee from coming to our estuary. The county was promised that they would receive free of charge a 150-acre conservation area that would be deeded to them for public use. In September of 2008, the Lindemann Group exercised the option with True Cane to purchase phase 2, the second 1,000 acres of Lake Point. In 2008 and 2009, the Water Management District and Lake Point negotiated a contract that is called the Development Agreement. And Lake Point was going to make money by excavating rock, and that would make it possible for them to give free of charge to the district a site that they could build a stormwater treatment area on. And the district would get a free piece of land, and Lake Point would also provide fill and some very valuable earthwork to build a shell, if you will, of the stormwater treatment area and to finish up the stormwater lakes. You can see, by the way, all of this beginning to happen in an aerial photo on Google Earth. Lake Point would be allowed to mine in the original agreement 2 stormwater lakes that would end up amounting to 1,000 acres, and they could mine for 20 years. That would put them in 2029 as finishing the project up entirely. In the same time period, Martin County entered into an interlocal agreement, not with Lake Point, but with the South Florida Water Management District. And they set out certain conditions for the project to follow. Lake Point would be designated a public stormwater project, and that would relieve them of going through the formal review process. Wouldn't relieve them of meeting the rules. They would still have an informal review of all of the work they did by the county staff, but they wouldn't have to spend months in public hearings. Lake Point later became interested in selling water to utilities to the south, in Palm Beach County and further south. They made their first public announcement about selling water in 2012, in September of 2012, when they were having discussions with the city of West Palm Beach about taking water from Martin County, pumping it up out of the St. Lucie Canal, where it come from Lake Okeechobee, and moving it down to sell to the city of West Palm Beach. In January of 2013, Martin County staff recommended issuing a notice of violation on the Lake Point project. The project was not shut down. It has continued to operate ever since it was first approved. It's continued to sell rock. The same January, the staff at the Water Management District told Lake Point that their contract did not allow them to sell water. And Lake Point promptly sued South Florida Water Management District, Martin County, and Maggy, Hurchalla for breach of contract and for tortious interference, which I first thought when I read it was torturing, but no, it's tortious. It's a wrong. The suit has been going on ever since. Lake Point later sued Martin County for failure to turn over public records in a separate lawsuit. On August 11th, 2016, Judge McManus issued an order in the case that concluded users are allowed to borrow it under a permit system that lets them have a permit for a certain amount of time for a reasonable beneficial use. The settlement appears to let Lake Point sell its irrigation rights to another user with a different use. That appears to privatize public water and to give permit holders permanent ownership of our water. The original, number 2, the original agreement ended in 2029. Lake Point was allowed to mine rock for 20 years. It provided for turning over land to the district very early in that 20 years. The new agreement lets Lake Point mine rock for 50 years and doesn't require any land to be turned over for 50 years to the district or anybody else in the public. That'll be 2067. A lot of us think if we haven't saved our river by then, it'll be dead. Of course, a lot of us will. Number 3, the settlement awards a no-bid contract to Lake Point to supply riprap for all of the Water Management District projects for the next 15 years. Whether they need it or not, they will have to buy 50,000 tons a year from Lake Point or pay a large monetary penalty. And since this part of the agreement tends to make people gasp out loud, it's possible that somebody might sue and say that this was illegal under Florida contract law or something like that. So they put in a piece that says, if a court rules this year that the no-bid exclusive contract is illegal, then taxpayers in South Florida will be required to pay Lake Point $19 million. One way or another. If you prove they can't do it, then you have to do it. Sort of. Number 4, the original agreement was a trade. Lake Point would get mine rock for 20 years. The district would get free land for a stormwater treatment area, and Lake Point would provide some valuable earthwork and some valuable fill for the stormwater treatment area, and it would complete the stormwater lakes to the specifications of the permit. The settlement removes Lake Point's obligations to do any of these things. The only obligation they have is to mine rock and sell it. The agreement says this is a very important public benefit. They no longer have obligations, seemingly at all. They can dig rock for 50 years and sell water for 50 years. In 50 years, the district might use the 800 acres next to the 1,000-acre lakes, the 1,000-acre holes in the ground, or they might not. There's no requirement that they do. That's the district settlement. The Martin County settlement agrees with everything the district says. And it appears to give Lake Point absolutely everything they ever wanted. It would take too long to tell you all of the things that they gave Lake Point, all the way down to taking away the hauling fees, returning $650. I mean, every little thing is in there. But there are some really interesting examples of what it does. It changes what is allowed in the A2 zoning. Anybody live on a 5-acre lot? Good thing. We have a lot of pleasant rural areas west of Hope Sound, west of Palm City, around tropical farms where people have 5-acre lots, and they enjoy the fact that it's rural. Well, one of the conditions of the mediated settlement was the A2 zoning had to be changed, because Lake Point has A2 zoning, and A2 zoning doesn't allow you to build cement plants and mines. And so they were required in the mediated settlement to expedite the change of the A2 zoning category. And they did so last Tuesday. But the really interesting part of the agreement is that should somebody out in that rural area on their 5-acre lot where they thought it'd be really nice to raise children and horses and whatnot, look at what happened to their zoning and the fact they might wake up next to a cement plant. And if they should question it and sue, the agreement with Lake Point says the county agrees to fight the suit. Not only does the county agree to fight the suit, the county agrees to seek monetary damages against anybody who sues to protect their A2 zoning. That's a really nasty catch-22. Number 2, the county is required to buy 400 acres from Lake Point. They would be much better off if they were not required to buy this acreage. They would be much better off if they didn't even have to own this acreage, because now Lake Point won't have to pay taxes on it. Commissioner Campy pointed out that nobody from Martin County is ever going to use that land. I looked up the tax appraisers. I couldn't find what the appraisal is on the entire 400 acres, but there's a 167-acre parcel that was set aside as a preserve in the Blakely subdivision, and that's appraised at $850 an acre. The county is paying $30,000 an acre for the 400 acres. But that's not the worst of it. Don't start saying that's a bad deal or you will get a worse deal. Because again, they have covered themselves. Immediately upon signing of the agreement, the county has to put up an escrow of $4 million of your dollars. And if the county has not closed on the property by January 18, 2018, and delivered $12 million to Lake Point, then you will not get the property, and you will lose your $4 million escrow, and you will agree to be sued for breach of contract.
And they signed that?
For those people who are interested, I'm going to make up a packet of documents. Not of opinions, you can get a copy of this, but just a copy of documents so you can see what this actually says for yourself. One of the things I love about people in Martin County is they can read. Finally, the county was forced to apologize and grovel on your behalf. They were required to say that Lake Point is an important and integral part of environmental restoration and regional water supply in South Florida. They were required to say that it contributes in a meaningful and environmentally responsible way to creation of the Public Works project by excavating land. They also had to say that it is a vital component of the orderly growth of Martin County. And finally, my favorite, they got to say, the county acknowledges Lake Point is a good corporate citizen and appreciates the efforts of Lake Point regarding its contributions to the Public Works project and to the well-being of Martin County and its residents. The whole thing reminds me of the playground bully who's not satisfied with sitting on his victim and beating him up and then rubbing his face in the mud, but he wants him to say uncle too. It feels like Alice in Wonderland when the Red Queen wrote the contract, so that if you don't grovel, pay millions of dollars, and give away the store, off with your head. But it's not the county commissioners that voted for the contract. They're going to lose their heads. It's the people and the taxpayers of Martin County. Thank you. And now, being an old lady, I'm going to demand a chair, and then I'll answer some questions. And again, I may have to stiff arm you if it's a question that would relate to my lawsuit. Yes, water now would be nice. Yes, John.
In your closing comments, you mentioned how the commissioners, or the commission, I think, said Lake Point isn't integral, Lake Point contributes, Lake Point... Was that said by commissioners? What was the context
That
of
is said in the mediation agreement, that Martin County agrees that these things are so.
And so it's written in the mediation agreement.
And in addition to that, they made Martin County write a letter of apology that any commissioners had ever said anything bad about it.
Thank you.